Hello and welcome to Doing Business in Rwanda. My name is Michael Mjisha. On this particular episode, we are at the Transform Africa Summit 2018, where much of the discussions are going about accelerating Africa's single digital market. What's needed to deliver this? We get more from the stakeholders on this episode of Doing Business in Rwanda. As we get much deeper into the fourth industrial revolution with Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, organizations like Microsoft have set up cloud computing solutions with hope to digitize African transformation cost effectively.
We need to come to having one common voice around how we drive that digital marketplace that we all talk about. And so I think for us to do that, it's having the one vision, understanding what the risks are, knowing what we know, but also coming to understanding what we don't know, right? And so there's a lot of learning pains that are also coming out about with adoption of technology, which people are not aware of. But as we look at sort of the adoption of technology, it's a question of what type and what for. At the World Bank Spring meetings a couple weeks ago, there was a discussion around developing, a digital platform for Africa. That's wonderful, but how, again, for what context of our industry, our economies, are we actually looking at doing that? And so part of the work that we do with Microsoft and launching our Cloud for Global Good initiative is looking at how do you actually drive the right adoption of cloud for the right scenarios and the right customers, essentially digitizing transformation, but at a cost-effective way, leapfrogging the traditional infrastructure barriers that we have for us to be able to come up par with the rest of the world in terms of the information we use, but also where and how we're driving our trades, our businesses, and our economic growth as well.
The GSM prominence remains strong in rural areas where coverage and power purchasing are low, and is forecast to represent 12% of total subscription in 2023. On the other hand, 5G subscriptions are expected to reach 2 million subscriptions by 2023. But what exactly is being looked at as the driver for 5G demand?
When you think about what drives demand for 5G, and what we're seeing is in many parts of the world, it's not just some obscure fourth industrial revolution use case that maybe people don't accept. It's actually consumer demand. I've talked to a number of our customers who basically say, consumer demand for data on my network is growing so fast that I need 5G just to manage that. And the thing that people don't think about so much about 5G is that it's much more efficient. So it lowers the cost per bit of data transmitted. So when you think about emerging markets, actually 5G could be a really good answer because it does provide really high capacity, but much lower cost per actual bit that goes over that network. And that's a powerful thing.
Things are moving quite fast because also the penetration across the continent is getting fast. The mobile penetration, the broadband and the internet connection is picking up, maybe not as fast as we would hope, but it's picking up. So the business cycle is getting shorter. So there's acceleration in many things, but already across the continent, as I said, we have some pretty good examples of how ICT is gradually, being considered the backbone for the development of other sectors, and governments are already working on transforming the way government and private sector does business using these technologies, ICT.
There is no other way except really to leverage the power of the ICT to expand the services to these areas, and definitely to be able to build on the existing infrastructure, improve it, and expand new infrastructure. You need a partnership between the public and the private sector. And honestly, this is what's really happening in most of the African countries. I mentioned the World Bank project in Rwanda for the supply of the bulk capacity to grow the bandwidth with plus 1 gigabits. And I mentioned as well the Republic of Congo project, infrastructure project, really to develop the national backbone and extends the national and cross-border links. These kind of projects definitely will help expanding services to rural areas and ultra-rural.
Now, internet connectivity in rural Africa is very limited, where you find close to 70% of the African population still offline. Now, if we are talking about accelerating a single digital economy for the continent, what needs to be put into consideration first?
Health. You see what's going on even in developing countries. In fact, more so in developing countries. They're taking the quantum leap on using smartphone technology, biometrics, smart cards, and so on, to capture health data. And instead of spending the traditional budget for health, if we use technology as an enabler, I'm not saying that's the solution for everything, but it's an enabler. By using technology, you capture data about individuals. On the phone today with biometrics, you can know how your health is, how your pulse is going. You can report directly to a central medical center. You can get prescriptions on it remotely. You can have conversations with physicians. So in remote locations where people don't have access to all the services, they can now have virtual services, for example.
I told somebody that with one phone and one bank account would transform Africa, okay? Because it's, we actually do open bank accounts for people. And therefore, the services that they have on that becomes much more efficient, both for them and for us, and therefore much more cheaper for them as well. Now, the various, so at the very grassroots level, the app works. You can do only domestic transfer if that's what you want to do. You don't need foreign currency. And the app also works at 2G, by the way. The app works at 2G. So, of course, it's not as fast as when it's 3G and 4G and that, but at 2G, the app works. And ultimately, what we want to get to is a situation where even when there's no network, we're able to have an offline transactions that allow at remote places for people to be able to actually do transactions, especially when the lines are fluctuating. But today we've been able to get the app to work on 2G.
Now, as Africa moves towards the Agenda 2063, the intention to create a conversation between government and private sector leaders on leveraging the power of technology to drive the continent's development is key, and the private sector players welcomed this with arms wide open.
Now, when you look at opening up, you know, the whole of Africa into a single market, and then having it, you know, digitized, then players like us who are having smart city solutions that have worked in some countries and are yet to be proven in other countries, then there's a lot of space for us to run. I think it's a foundation that creates huge, immersive opportunities for private sector.
Entrepreneurs are ready for that Africa's single digital market. But for entrepreneurs alone, they won't be able to do it. What they need is the government policies, government legislature. But government legislature and policies can go two ways. One, you can bring in legislation that prohibits progress in entrepreneurship by regulating it or over-regulating it before the ideas really go out to benefit the people. But at the same time, we could do very little to support entrepreneurship. And when there's no policies, it's very difficult to thrive, because even the investors who want to invest in your ideas, they want to find a stable government policy that governs, that's standard, not only for you in your country, but where you can scale it up to the rest of the continent, and the standard is still the same.
Now, during the extraordinary AU summit in Kigali, where 44 countries signed a deal to establish the African Continental Free Trade Area, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said he supports calls for a single African currency, even a digital one. Now, Bitcoin founder Dr. Craig Wright says the disruptive technology is set to revolutionize every industry across the globe.
What I want to see is an actual trading unit, monetary unit, something that we create smart contracts on, something that we tokenize goods and services on. And we're now starting to move into releasing product for that, and we're going to have and open up the ability to trade, to create logistics systems, transport systems, tracking systems. We're going to enable companies, basically whether they're small or as big as someone like Amazon, to more efficiently trade and transact. And that's all that really matters. And at the end of the day, you can say all this other stuff is important, but it's not. A global monetary system that enables end-to-end tracking, enables trust, enables escrow, enables the ability to monitor every little problem along the global supply chain, that enables people to actually hedge and buy into what we have in the West in countries like Rwanda here, so that they can actually pre-sell their coffee harvest, so that they can put out investment strategies saying that if I do this and put new types of coffee variety in, I'll get prepaid by investors who actually do that as well. That's what Bitcoin's really about.
At the Transform Africa Summit, Inmarsat signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Smart Africa Secretariat, which aims to accelerate the development and implementation of public-private partnerships.
This MOU includes our partners in creating this Digital Cities initiative, and having the smart cities now formally brought together as an MOU amongst Tillman, Inmarsat and Civic Connect allows us now to work together to go and work with the government on a public-private partnership model, which is the mechanism for funding these kinds of very large-scale developments. And that's really where Rwanda is today in terms of having a master plan for the city. What we're bringing now is this public-private partnership model in order to allow us to fund that effort. And that is something we want to move out on very quickly so that we can actually begin to deploy hardware here in Kigali, as well as in a couple of other cities, which will be our initial base.
And that brings us to the end of this rather successful doing business in Rwanda on Transform Africa in Kigali 2018, where much of the deliberations were going around accelerating Africa's single digital market. Now, much of the conversations were around blockchain technology, ICT infrastructure, looking at how we can create a one cryptocurrency, how could that be done, more on the conversation. Now, if you have any feedback or any questions that you would like to be expounded on as well, you can simply send us an email to dbir@abn360.com or tweet us at dbirwanda. My name is Michael Mjisha. Thank you very much for watching.